Hello and welcome back to another video from Real English with Real Teachers. Today we're going to be giving you 4 psychological tips to communicate better in English.
But before we get into this excellent video that's really going to benefit your fluency, your speaking skills in English, we'd like to tell you that this video is sponsored by our very own Immersion course, which we do here in the UK every couple of months, and we want to tell you about it as well. So what we do on a typical day is we have 6 foreign learners of English, all living under the same roof with me and Charlie. We've got the top bedroom of the house. And we will start the day with 3 hours of lesson. And it's a fun lesson all about communicating better in English. So lots of fun activities. We then take a trip to an interesting place in England, be it a castle or Brighton or Seven Sisters Cliffs. And we like to give you different trips on every single course that we do. And then we come back from those trips, we cook together, and in the evenings, we do some speaking activities as well. So if you like the sound of that and you want to become a better communicator, a better speaker in English, then you can join us. You are welcome. Anyone is welcome to come as long as they have an intermediate level or higher. So if you like the sound of that, then click the link to our immersion courses in the description box of this video and submit your email address, and then we'll get in touch with you.
But enough of that. Let's get on with the show, shall we? Tip number 1.
Tip number 1.
Lovely stuff, Harry. Music to my ears, really is. Tip number 1. Use the 5-second rule. What is the 5-second rule? Well, this came to me after watching a TEDx talk by a certain lady called Mel Robbins. Had to check that name. By Mel Robbins. And this theory is to think that if an idea comes to you and you don't act on it immediately, it will fizzle, it will diffuse away, and you won't actually achieve anything from that thought. So her simple strategy that is actually accepted quite far and wide is to count to 5, and within those 5 seconds, you've got to act on your idea, okay? And this can relate to language learning or language-based goals really well. Like for me, in some classes learning a language like Spanish, I would think of something to say, but would want to perfect it in my head before coming out with it. And before I know it, the moment's gone and I didn't get my chance to prove myself in very basic Spanish. So the principle, when you think of something related to language learning, act on it within 5 seconds.
Exactly. I really like this tip. So in Charlie's situation, if he thought of something, he wanted to say it, but he didn't say it, that's really going to affect his fluency, and that's going to become a habit as he goes on in his language journey in Spanish. So it's really important that when you think of something, say it, and then that will become a habit. And not only is it useful for developing fluency, but also when it comes to building vocabulary. Did you know that we are much more likely to remember and absorb vocabulary if we are learning it in the actual context which is related to that vocabulary? For example, if you're learning football words related to football, you're much more likely to remember them if you learn them while playing football. So words like goal, goalkeeper, football player, ball, for example. That's quite a basic one, ball. That was actually my favorite word. But the other day, for example, I was in the cinema and I wanted to say to my Spanish friend that the cast of the film is really good. The cast being the actors that are playing in the film. So I instantly, in those first 5 seconds, I looked up that word and I found out what it was. I used it in the conversation and now I remember it. It's still in my head. And that's thanks to this 5-second rule, and it's proven in research that this really works. So try and implement that in your speaking as well. It's really going to benefit you.
Very nice, very nice. Can you remember the sentence in Spanish?
Yeah, I said something like, el reparto de la película es muy, muy bueno. Me encanta.
Sexy. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so on to tip number 2.
Tip number 2.
Forgot to do the thing. Yeah. Oh,
well. Yeah, I see that. I saw that.
Number 2, guys. Listen mindfully. Mindfully. To be mindful of where you are and what you're doing. Instead of focusing on what you've got to do after that, engage in the conversation and do what they call active listening. And that is to realize that you're not just here for someone to speak at, but you're here to connect with that person on a real emotional level. And on top of that, it's good to remember that language was actually created for us to connect as humans. And it's not the end goal to think of the best way to deliver your language. So listen mindfully.
Exactly. And when we say mindfully, we mean to be present. Like a Buddhist monk, they're very much present. And for that reason, they're so happy and they don't experience anxiety. When I was learning Spanish and I was more an intermediate level speaker, I always used to think, what am I going to say when this person stops speaking? And that would generate anxiety. And when you're anxious for prolonged periods of time, a hormone called cortisol is released in your blood. And that impedes your ability to think creatively, to concentrate in the moment, and it blocks your creativity. So we really don't want that. So we need to stay in the present. And the way to stay in the present is to really listen to what that person is saying. So if you ask that person, what did you do at the weekend? Listen to what they did at the weekend and then respond accordingly. Oh, you played golf. Ah, how was it? Where did you play? Who were you with? And it creates a natural conversation and you won't feel so anxious. You'll feel a lot more confident. So it's a simple tip, but it's something we often forget. And it's a very important part of connecting with other humans, like Charlie said. So keep that in mind.
On to tip number 3.
Tip number 3.
Tip number 3. You ready for it, guys? I'm going to pull it down. And when Harry remembers, he's also going to put his down.
I completely forgot to pull mine down.
All right. So greet confidently and speak colorfully. So when we talk about greeting confidently, in the UK, there are a number of ways that you can greet someone, and it does get a bit confusing and awkward for a native. So we recommend, instead of worrying about what to do, just think of this advice, okay? In a formal situation, when you're meeting a man or a woman, what do you do, Harry?
Just shake their hand. All right. I mean, hi. Nice. Not all right. All right is too informal. How are you? Nice to meet you.
There you go. Exactly. Hello, or how are you? Nice to meet you. Done. In an informal situation, when you're meeting a man, same again. You shake their hand. Okay? Simple. And for a female, what would you do, Harry?
Well, English ladies love hugging. So I would go for a hug. It's not threatening. It's warm. It's cuddly. And it's a nice way to greet someone. So go for a nice, warm, affectionate hug. But don't let your arms go down too far. Just
no perving, Harry. This is strictly I was going to say formal, but it's informal. Yeah. Okay. So a hug for a woman. Now, there are options out there, but we think if you stick by this, you're not going to confuse yourself and overcomplicate things. Stick to that and think about other things that are more important. And one of the pieces of advice we should say is if you're in a group or you're meeting a group, take your time with them. Don't rush through it and feel like the aim is to finish. Connect with them, make eye contact, and appreciate them as a real human.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you are connecting with people like that, you're not rushing and you know what to do, give them a hug or shake their hand, you'll feel more relaxed and more confident in those situations. The next thing we want to talk to you about is to speak colorfully. Speak colorfully. And what we mean by that is to have lots of intonation, changes in pitch and tone when you speak. Me and Charlie found that when we speak with our students, the students who do change their pitch, their tone when they talk, it's a lot more interesting to listen to them. It's a lot more interesting. So it's a basic tip again, but it's something you should keep in mind, because if you are talking to someone with a very monotonal voice, they might get quite bored, quite frankly, and you'll see that in their face. And that will mean that your confidence, your self-esteem may dip as well. And we don't want that to happen. We want you to feel comfortable in your interactions. So give yourself the best chance by varying your tone and your pitch. Like, consider these two sentences, for example.
At the weekend, I really like to play with my train set.
At the weekend, I really like to play with my train set. I just love it.
Very nice. Very nice. I know which one I prefer.
Exactly. Who would you rather spend time with? Me or Charlie? Obvious.
Don't write that. No, don't write that. Tip number 4.
Tip number 4. And I'm just going to take that down.
Very good. So the last, but certainly not least, is to choose your conversation partners wisely. Take it away, Harry.
So this is really, really important. And again, it's quite obvious. But a lot of people, when they choose a conversation partner for a language exchange or a teacher with whom they're going to speak with, they choose someone who actually doesn't make them feel very comfortable. And that has an adverse effect on their fluency and how they're feeling when they're speaking. It's so important that we feel relaxed when we're talking so that the words can come out naturally. Whenever I choose a Spanish teacher, I try to choose somebody who I can connect with, someone who shares my interests, someone who is genuinely interested in me and is patient and makes me feel comfortable. If you are struggling with confidence issues in speaking, this is a great, great tip. And we recommend that you choose someone that really makes you feel relaxed, not a teacher that's making you feel on edge, like you're scared to make mistakes.
Exactly. Do you make your students feel on edge, Harry? Are you a nerve-wracking teacher?
I'll say, what's the past perfect? What is it? Hey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm assuming that you don't do that in class, do you?
Absolutely not. Because these situations, when you associate negative feelings with an interaction, it happened to my mum, actually. She quit learning Spanish for a while because she had a bad experience. Have you heard of that happening, Charlie?
Definitely. Yeah, it's a toxic thing to have that experience of negativity when you're trying to be, you're trying to challenge yourself. It's a big, scary world to learn a language, and to find a moment where you're tarnished by that experience, you don't need it. So take a moment to think about those people that make you feel comfortable to be vulnerable. And thinking about our teaching, the people who stick around with us for the longest, they're the ones that we connect with on a human level, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. The students I've had for the longest are the ones I really consider my friends, because they feel natural. They open up, and I open up to them, not too much. And we have lovely conversations. So once you've had lots of those interactions, you feel more confident as a speaker, then maybe you'll feel more comfortable stepping out of your comfort zone and talking with just someone on the street or someone you don't feel so relaxed with.
Exactly. Okay, so there we have it. 4 psychological tips to communicate better in English. And now it's your turn to tell us what your favorite tips are and how you are going to implement them in your life.
Exactly. And leave that in the comments box and tell us how you're going to use that. So if you like these lessons and you would like to support our work, but also to get more live lessons, more one-to-one classes, and also group lessons with Charlie and I, you can become one of our patrons by clicking up here. It could be up here. We have lots of monthly memberships where you can become one of our patrons and get these lessons with us. So we highly recommend you join. If you're new to us, welcome. And we would like to encourage you to subscribe by clicking this little circle here. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up if you'd like to see more psychological tips. And finally, if you've got 5 minutes to spare, then watch this video over here. It's a bloody good one. Bye for now.